how I came to the United States. So I was originally born in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and I lived there for about 5 years before the war broke out, the civil war in Bosnia. And when that broke out, it was very uncertain times, and my parents thought it would be best if we moved to Germany for the time being before the war got, more intense and more danger would come to the city where we lived. And I had an uncle in Germany that lived there and had a career and everything. So we figured, let's try and apply to go to Germany for the time while there's a war in our country. And so we were one of the last people that was able to make it out of Bosnia before one of the big Mostar bridges collapsed. So it was very traumatic, actually. But
How old were you?
I was like 5.
Wow.
I was 5 and I was in a bus. My parents had to pay some extra money, like just to get us into that last bus to leave Tuzla, where I was. That was like the big city. They drove over to Mostar and to get us out of that country. And I remember that that bus, there were so many people there that my parents were only able to get 2 seats, and I was on my mom's lap, and my dad had the baby. So that was like another reason. The only way my dad could have come was to help with the kids, because they wanted all the men to stay there to fight for the war. And my mom had 2 of us. So I was on the lap, and there were people standing like sardines, all packed. Like, it was a packed bus. And I remember it was like the worst drive ever. As a child, you have to go to the bathroom all the time, and we couldn't. We had to just stay there, and it was just a really crazy adventure out of our country. But we made it. The last bus, we arrived at some point to Germany, I think it was Munich. So that's when they received all the last refugees from Bosnia. And my uncle came. He had lived in Frankfurt, but he came and picked us up, and he couldn't believe we made it out of all of that. And so we were refugees in Germany. We stayed there for 10 years. And that was tough, because the laws were always changing in Germany too. Like, you can work this month, you cannot work that month. You need to show a visa and just go, and constantly work at that, because we wanted to make sure we were legally there. And my parents were always working and, learning German language and all of that. They were very involved. And so it was a constant battle for 10 years that we lived there to keep like our status as legal refugees, because they don't have immigrants there. You're considered a refugee because you're supposed to go back once the war is over, right? After 10 years of staying there, we couldn't really go back because our house had been bombed, and just things were just not the same like they were when we lived in Bosnia. My family in Bosnia was so poor that they didn't, like, we had to support them all throughout while we lived in Germany. So when we found out it was like our last month in Germany and there was no way we could stay anymore, we found out about a program to come to apply to be an immigrant in America. And we're like, wow, this is like a whole new opportunity in our life. So my parents applied. We didn't know if we were going to qualify, right? Because we didn't know anyone that had come, like, immigrated to the United States, so they applied, and like they did a lot of background on my parents to make sure like they always worked and they studied the language, and my parents always did that. So we were like a good, I guess, a family to be accepted to come to the United States, because they looked at all of our background, every single thing, and they did health checkups and everything to make sure that we're good to go. So after all of that, for like a whole month, I still couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm never going to go. That sounds like a dream. Like, all I knew about America was Hollywood movies, and hurricanes, because we didn't have that in Europe. So I was like, I'm never going to deal with that. That's only in America. Well, the day came when so we got a sponsor through this program. So the way the program worked, that we came to America, was through Lutheran services. So the Lutheran church supported that, I guess, that immigration process that we were part of, like the war refugees from Bosnia. And I think it was Clinton was like the president during that time. So it was kind of all like working together and built-in process for us. The
Yeah.
Lutheran church accepted us to come here. They helped pay for our flight tickets, and then we had to pay that back within the first year when we arrived here. So they guided us along the way, and I'll never forget that, because when you think about your whole life is about to change, and you have to get rid of everything because you're moving to a whole nother continent, and we didn't really know exactly, like they said, you will hear from us like this week. So it was kind of like uncertain, but they were telling us we were accepted to come to the United States. So my parents were like, let's just sell everything, because we're not going to come back if everything works out and we can be there and safe and have a new life. So it was like a drastic month of just change, and just watching my whole childhood memories just kind of like being like taken apart, because I had to sell my toys. I had as a child, that was huge, and I could only take like a briefcase like of my life with me to this new adventure. So as exciting as it was also like the worst, because as a child, the connections, the friendships you make, that's kind of like all that's like the most important thing as a child. So but so we came to Chicago O'Hare because we had one cousin in all of the United States who lived in Iowa, and the most nearby, closest, biggest airport was Chicago. So we flew into Chicago, and that was my first time in the United States when I came to Chicago. And I'll never forget, I went to McDonald's to get my first soda, and they spoke so fast, and I was like, what? And I remember saying one Coke, because like that's all I knew how to say. And they were like, that's all I remember hearing. And I was like, wow, this is not the English I learned in school, because it was so fast, and it was like the dialect, I guess, from Chicago. So anyhow, and I had learned British English in Germany for like many years. So anyhow, our cousins had lived in Iowa, like I mentioned, Waterloo, Cedar Falls, Iowa. So they came to pick us up. Then we lived in Iowa. We lived with them for a few months, because we didn't know how to live in America, and the laws and the language. My parents had to learn all of that. So I'm giving you like the whole timeline.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
And then you can ask
I
me
have
more
a couple
questions.
of questions, but I want you to like let it out, and then little by little.
Okay, I'll just keep letting it out.
Yeah.
So we got to Iowa. We lived there. We lived with our cousin for a few months, and then we got our own apartment. And then we lived there for about 2 years. My parents they went to a Lutheran church. The Lutheran church that helped us to get there. They also helped my parents getting them bicycles, because we just had come here and they didn't work or anything. So they had to figure all of it out. So they gave them bicycles, and I was in school. I had a school bus, but my parents, they used bicycles to go to the local community college to learn English. That went on for like a good 6 months. And so once they got to a point where they could communicate the basics, my dad decided he was going to find some work, because some of his friends that he had also met through that time in learning English in school, they were starting to work. So he started working, but my mom stayed in school. So she's still in school today. She's never left school, because she loves to always learn new things.
Awesome.
And just having the opportunity to do that and continue to grow yourself, I think that's just kept motivating her and drive her. Anyhow, so
how let me just stop you right there. How old were you when you arrived to Chicago? Just so that I know what the process.
I think I was like 14, 15. I just had a few months left of middle school. And then I started, then I had a long summer, and then I started high school.
And when your dad and mom told you, hey, we're going to America, and you said, wow, like what was the reaction that you had? What has gone through your head based on all the things that you've been, experiencing through your 14 years of life?
Yeah. So like growing up in Germany at that time of my life, all the good things, the most impossible things happen in America. And I remember all the kids always loved the idea of America, the free world, the free country, the opportunities, right? Hollywood, all the celebrities live there. Yes, you have hurricanes, but that's only in Florida. We're never going to live there. That was our mindset then, right? Like, we're never going to deal with hurricanes. And it's so funny. I'm right here in Florida. But anyhow, so when my parents told me, like, there's an opportunity that we can go, live in the United States, and having watched them suffer for those last 10 years of just constant, like, from blood pressure rising to like constantly like financial supporting my family, and just not knowing, like, just that uncertainty of our whole lives, not knowing like we can actually live somewhere in peace. And then finding out, well, you can live maybe in the United States and become an American. To me, that was like the impossible to imagine. That was like so good that it was impossible to even like believe that it could be true. Like it was kind of like, I believe it when I see it, because I still don't believe it in that moment as a child. And then a lot of my friends didn't believe me either when I told them, hey, I'm going to be moving to America. And they're like, no way, you're a refugee. A lot of people did not think that we would qualify, because I guess depending on where you're from, you apply for a green card or whatever, it's different for everybody. But because we were in that special, I don't want to say program, but the process for being an immigrant from a country where you couldn't go back because you had nothing to go back to, you qualified. And it was under Clinton administration. So that's how we fit in, and that's how we were able to be guided through that whole process and be where we are today. Yeah. Which we'll get into shortly, but so yeah, when I found out, like, these are the flight tickets, I think when I saw the flight tickets, that's when I believed it. I was like, okay, now I will start packing because now I believe this. And that was my first time on an airplane too, so that was really exciting.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And so you're in Chicago, you're in Iowa, and you got to Chicago, then you went to Iowa to your cousin, and you were figuring out how to live there. Your parents were getting ready to, to be part of the America livelihood. What happened to you in school? Like, what was the crush that happened between you from Bosnia, raised some years in Germany, and now the American English, all of this? Talk to me.
So I had learned British English in Germany for several years. So I knew the basics and I was really good at the grammar, but just like the American English was so much faster that it just really took me a while to adjust to it. But I remember when I first started school, kids would notice that I was dressing different and that I would speak English different. So I was considered the German girl. They would call me the German girl. Wow. And but I was so advanced. Like, the education I got in Germany put me through like all the ESL and honors. And I remember going through like doing honors classes in in high school, because I already knew so much of like the math and I knew the grammar too. I was just struggling to read books. I remember that because in high school they started giving you books, and that was a big change for me. But after a while, I felt like it took me some time, but after a while, I was able to make friends, and there was a small group of immigrants, from Bosnia in Iowa, and they kind of helped me to adjust and adapt as well. So people would tell me, hey, if you do this really good, then maybe you could get a scholarship and go to college. So like slowly I was starting to understand that's how it is here. Like, that's what you do, because in Germany, you don't pay for college. So here, people were telling me, like, this kind of what you do, and try to take more classes in the summer, and this will help you to do sports. And so people were painting a picture for me on what to do when I was done with high school, like early on. So that was good, because I had no idea, no one in my family had gone to college in America before. So we didn't really know how that worked.
Yeah. And your brother, how old was he?
Oh, he was really little. I forgot. It's terrible. Hold on. He was like, I remember he started elementary school. When we first moved to Iowa, he first started elementary school. So, yeah. So he was like
6 or 7? Around.
Yeah, like 6 or 7. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So he really grew up to, he was a baby then when you left Bosnia. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so he doesn't speak a lot of Bosnian or Serbo-Croatian, the name of the language. He does not speak a lot of it because he doesn't remember really living there much. He was a baby when they left.
Yeah. So Iowa was for you the beginnings of the United States. What happened then?
So after 2 years, my parents had a friend that they met through the college that where they learned English, and that friend had moved up to Florida, to Sarasota, Florida. So they invited my parents to come visit for the summer, and my mom, it was always her dream to visit Florida. So when we decided, let's take a break from Iowa and let's go visit them. It was like summer break. So when we came to Florida, my mom and my parents both couldn't believe just like a place where you don't have to change your oil, like, and your tires. You don't have to like deal with winter and snow, and you have palm trees and the beach. And to them, it was like a dream come true. Like they couldn't imagine wanting to live anywhere else than Florida. So literally after like our 1 week vacation, first time vacation I think it ever, we moved, like we went back to Iowa, packed up everything and moved to Florida 2 weeks later. It was like an instant move. And it was, I think what kept driving them was like that just knowing that it's okay to be here. Like we can live here. We don't have to worry about having to go back to nothing in Bosnia or Germany because we had sold all our stuff. We hadn't really nowhere to go back to. So, and just knowing that we don't have to be worried about this anymore. We don't have to worry about living in peace. We can just start now, finally, to create our lives. Because some people, they'll start creating their lives once they start having children or they get married, right? You start planning, I'm going to buy a house and this and that. But my parents never had that opportunity because they were just fighting to support their family in Bosnia going through war and us and raising 2 kids and then trying to, find stable housing and
Yeah.
not be worried about having to pick up and leave again. So just that drive and that and just knowing like this is safe. This is a good place. Like we're welcome here. Everyone kept saying, welcome to America, welcome. And it warmed my heart every time. I'm like, these people are so nice in this country because no one ever told me welcome to Germany. So I was like, wow, this is just like, my dream come true for our whole family. So we were so grateful for all of that. We'll never forget that, our first experience and how we were welcomed and treated and supported. And my parents knew they had to give back. I mean, they immediately, my dad started working, I said, like right after he learned enough English. My mom also started getting she was doing nursing in Germany, but she had to redo all of the diplomas here because of the language and everything. So she had to slowly start getting a nursing certificate here, college credits here. And so she was slowly working towards that and also starting to work. And then they paid back the flight ticket and they were able to save money to buy our first home. But we waited until we moved to Florida to buy our first home. But that's really like the first time when my family was able to settle and can say like they settled. They started their life then, even though I was like finishing high school, but still.
Yeah, I know. So you finally get to Florida and you're living with your parents' friends, or they welcome you to their house so that you could start going here in Florida? What happened?
So when we moved to Florida, actually, they had our friends, the only other Bosnian people at the time that lived here that we knew of. They knew like a person that they had rented a house from before, and she ended up having that house available again for rent. So we had asked her if we could rent that house and for some time, and she said yes, that's perfect timing. So actually we had like a house that we were able to rent, and that worked really well because we had lived in a small apartment for so long. Like my whole childhood in Germany was like a small apartment. Then in Iowa, we lived in a small apartment because we wanted to just figure out what we're going to do and how everything is going to work. And then finally we were like, oh, this is much better. We have like a room, and like it was much better renting a house for some time. So we didn't have to stay with the friends, like because my parents were already working and doing things to help support us.
So what were your parents working at? What was their first
Yeah.
option as a yeah?
So my mom, in before we even moved to Florida, in Iowa, she worked as a nurse, I think assistant at the time, and so this was kind of like when the internet started to really start like going everywhere, and people were applying online for jobs, like the first time ever. So this was like in 2002, I think. So she was like, Aida, let's go on Google online on the internet and find the hospital of the city where we're going to live in Sarasota. And let's see if we can email the human resources there to see if they have any jobs for me. So I said, okay, I'd never done this before, right? So I did that. And the HR director emailed back and said, yeah, we have a reserved spot for a nurse assistant already. Just let me know when you get here. So we did. We got there, and my mom did training right away. She literally, like a week later, she started working at the local hospital.
Amazing.
And that was just, yeah, I know nowadays the process is much more like you have to fill out a lot of paperwork, but then it was much quicker. And they interviewed her, like shortly after, and everything worked out well. And then my father, he had a friend who worked on Longboat Key Club Resort in hospitality, and they needed more people to like prepare the golf course and just do all of that, but it didn't require for you to talk a lot of English. It was like a great job for my dad, so he applied and he was hired right away because his friend recommended him, and that worked out really good. So we were so grateful. My parents were able to just start to have jobs right away when we came here. And I'm pretty sure that my mom, the reason why she was so lucky with that is because she started to invest early in her education. She started to take those classes and certifications in Iowa because they told her she could. So she was like, well, then let's do it. Like, I want to learn as much as I can to give me some kind of job security. So thankfully she did that. And then we were able to finish high school. I had 2 more years of high school before applying for college during that time.
Wow. Incredible. So everything seemed to be just aligned for you every time that you decided to do the next move and the next move. This is a big, big, big applause for your parents, because they've always been very diligent to see what was, I can only imagine going through that. I have 2 kids on my own, and it's just, not on my own, but like myself, I am a mom of babies.
Yeah.
Going through all that you're describing is just amazing, incredibly.
Yeah, because it's kind of like if you're not in that situation directly, you don't have to be in survival mode. And I think my parents, for so long, they were in survival mode. We're like, we need to save all the money we have because we don't know what's going to happen next. Like, we don't know what, because for 10 years in Germany, they were constantly anxiously awaiting more paperwork every month, or like the status of their refugee status and all of that could change any moment.
Yeah,
we heard people like having to leave overnight, like the police would come in and deport you. Like, it was extreme in a way in Germany. That when we came here, and I think like if they were still trying to adjust to like, this is okay. Like, no one is going to come after us. Like, we were in the process of applying for a citizenship, because they told us right away, go get your fingerprinting, like do all of that. So within 4 years, you can apply for your citizenship. So we did all of that. And that gave us, I think, a sense of like, okay,
it's real. We're staying. Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome.
So, but I think of like us moms here nowadays, we have all these things we worry about, right? Like, we worry about everything, little things, whatever. And I always ask my mom, like, how did you handle worrying about like being a parent on top of trying to support your family? Like when you think of like the stress and anxiety, like an immigrant or refugee faces, or someone that doesn't maybe have all their papers, and you just don't know what can happen to you in your whole life. that's like a lot of extra stress and worry that gets added on to the every other day, to the every other stress that you're already experiencing.
Yeah.
So whether it's your health, or family matters, all kinds of things. So I feel like it made my parents really strong in their marriage and in their just early on, because once they overcame that, I felt like any other things that were thrown at them, they were able to overcome much easier because it was nothing compared to what they just went through.
That's probably what it is that makes them so resilient and so powerful. And they just look ahead and not back, which is something that we always, I personally struggle always, like, oh my gosh, looking or thinking on the past instead of just focusing on your present and moving forward. So you, as a teenager now in Florida, in Sarasota, what were your expectations of here as a teenager that you kind of have a little bit of help in Iowa with all that Bosnian community? Like when you got here, were you still the girl wearing different clothing? Were you still the girl that was, trying to decipher what they were telling you because it was too fast? What happened to you?
So when I came here, I had a better idea of how things kind of were going to be, as far as like you finish high school and then you apply for college, you apply for scholarships. I had the idea, like I didn't know that until, I was told about what happens after high school. So I was junior in high school, and I remember that like other kids, they were applying for colleges early. Like the high school that I was in Florida, they already, like, you could take college classes while you're in high school. You could also work and get some kind of like a job that's part of your education, and then work there after you're done. I mean, all these like new things that we didn't have in Iowa. So I felt like, okay, I really like the medical field, like the, helping people. I knew I was going to do something with that. But then there was a scare of, we had this college advisor that said, well, are you a citizen? Because if you're not, you might have trouble getting into college. So that caused a lot of stress because I didn't know. I wasn't a citizen. I had some kind of visa at the time. So we had to figure that out and navigate through that to make sure that I can apply the regular application to go to school. So it was a struggle because I did not know about the standardized testing. I, was raised in Germany. I didn't really know here, like they start preparing you for the FCAT and the SAT and, and the ACT, like early on. You kind of know what to expect when you take these tests to get into college, the college, kind of placement tests. And I had no idea. I didn't know half of the stuff in there because it was strange comparing, like words to other words and trying to make sense of the information. The way it was presented. I remember even doing math completely different because of how I was, how I learned to do it in Germany. It was a little different, like the way like you apply formulas and stuff. So it took me like 7 times to pass the SAT to have a good enough score to get into college. I worked so hard because I had no idea.
Right.
I even called it the SAT instead of the SAT. It's like, what's the SAT test? I have to pass the SAT test. So it was like the hardest thing. I think one of the hardest things in my life, that passing those tests early on, because I was so fresh and it was all new to me. But once I got a good enough score and I wrote them a letter, I applied to a bunch of colleges, but my main one was University of South Florida in Tampa. It was like an hour away, and I knew they had a lot of different, opportunities and things for what you want to study. And I could always visit my parents on the weekends. So that was my goal. But that took a while. They did not accept me the first time I applied. And then I had to explain why I really still wanted to be considered. And then they said, you can start in the summer and show us how good of a student you are. And then we'll let you come back in the fall. And, coming from the parents that I came from, I was like, this is a challenge. I'm going for it. I'm going to, do my best. And I ended up with 3 credits that summer. 3 classes. I took 3 classes that first summer, and it was great. It was like a head start into college. And I proved that I think I got like all A's, maybe 1B, I don't know. But it was great. Like once I finally was able to go to college and, and actively do that, what I believe was like that next step to, creating who I want to be in the future. It was really good feeling because was so worried I was never going to get there because I wasn't a citizen yet, technically.
Got it.
So
So when you discovered that you were able to get in there and you finally were accepted, what went through your head?
I was going to be a doctor of all, like I was going to change the world. Like I was ready. To me, that was like a big door that was just open. And, they told me when we applied to come to America, they told me, you can become anything. You can do anything in that country. There's only one thing you cannot do, and that is become president. Because to be president, you have to be born in the United States. And I remember like crying, like tears of joy, because I'm like, who cares about that? I just don't want to deal with like visa, and stress and see my parents be so worried. I don't want to be president,
That's
like that
awesome.
was, yeah, I'll never forget that because I was like, welcome to America. But remember, you can do anything, but you cannot be president. I'm like, that's okay. I'm just so happy to be here.
I'm not shooting for that.
Yeah. But I understand, but that was so interesting. So for me, like to know that I'm here in this college and I can do anything. I just will never be able to be president. So it's like the next high thing. Doctor, maybe I want to be a doctor, Let's just get the studying. I just wanted to really just throw myself in there and just learn and absorb.
So what did you become? Talk to me about it. You graduated from college?
So I decided I was going to do medical school at first, because I wanted to help people. I wanted to work with, children and families. So I started to take a lot of heavy classes that are like biomedical science classes. And I got pretty overwhelmed early on. Chemistry and microbiology, those were really hard classes. And I remember like, I had like no interest in learning any more about it after like a year. Like, this is not me feeling like I'm learning to help people one day. So after a year and a half, I changed my major to psychology because I figured I can still help people when I'm done. I can find a job with psychology degree. I can even do sales with psychology because it's all about psychology, right? Like knowing how people think and say what they do and just understanding people better and helping them understand themselves. I just love that, the whole psychology idea. And I like that, the health field still. So I took a lot of classes in psychology and public health at USF, and I really liked that. I felt like I was studying things that I was so interested in, and that opened up my eyes to a lot more in this degree, in this field of psychology. And then I started working with children. But before I started working, so right after, I remember like the same week I graduated from USF after my 4 years. We found out my dad was sick. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer at the time. And we were just really, worried. We didn't know what was going to happen. And that was the biggest fear I had, if I had to stop school and maybe be there and help my family, right? And this was like happening. So it was really, really unexpected time for all of us. And my mom was still working in school. My dad had to take some time off. He had to go through treatment and surgery and all that. But luckily he recovered and he's been cancer-free since then. So thank God. But during that time I took a break and moved back home. And I was working, actually ended up working in the hospital where my mom works. And my dad had surgery. It was all happening that same month. It was really interesting. And I really liked working in just like the health field and helping people. So I decided to look for it was a part-time job, but I decided I was going to look for a full-time job working with families and children, something to do with psychology. So I got a job in Tampa, again, back to Tampa, and I worked with families, and I was helping them with kids who had behavior problems and just, doing case management and helping them, prepare them to see therapy or maybe be inpatient, live in a therapeutic environment for a couple of weeks to help them straighten out their behaviors and traumas and whatever they were dealing with. So I did this for a couple of years. I liked that job a lot because it exposed me to a variety of different, issues in the mental health world. And also the need for, therapy and assessment, the need for just proper assessment and care. that I felt like a lot of people didn't really know how to get, or they were not getting. They were in the wrong kind of, getting the wrong kind of support for what they really needed. So I noticed all my bosses had master degrees. And I figured, okay, I guess that's what I need to do. I need to get a master's degree so that I can do more with my life, with my job. So I I started grad school, and I was still working in that, working with families and helping them figure and navigate different programs in the community. And then I started studying mental health counseling because that was, kind of like in the line of work that I was in. And it was great because, again, I was doing school with something that I had interest in. I was already, working, and in a way I was already doing that. Even though I was working with therapists, I was setting up all the treatment and just that whole process. I was already in it. So by having my master's degree, that was just going to open more, opportunities for me. So I graduated in 2011, and I started to work as a therapist then. So did you have a question? I didn't hear you.
No, I was trying to ask you when you started the process of getting the master's degree, like everything was already simple and easy for you because you already had your citizenship, you already had graduated from school, so it was only just processing your basically your next step ahead, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I do mental health counseling right now. Everything is on the video, like a secure HIPAA approved video that I do therapy, but I also do psychological evaluations for immigration, different immigration matters. So I work a lot of times with people like citizens like citizens that have been married, American citizens who have been married to an immigrant who still, like, the paperwork is still not finalized yet. And so I evaluate and assess that person to help support an immigration case, or just to have for immigration purposes for court proceedings.
Is this something you choose because of where you're coming from and all the facts that you live through your life, the fact that you're a resident and that you kind of have the psychology background of it?
Yeah, I think it was unexpected. Like I always just wanted to work and help. Like I wanted to leave a mark at the end of the day, at the end of like my life. I wanted to feel like I left a mark. Like I helped people. I did something that was giving, because that's my personality type. I feel good when I give. So I wanted my career to kind of, encompass some of that. So when I started to do therapy and counseling, I ended up marrying actually an immigration attorney. That kind of also works together with that. And he was telling me about, something that would be interesting if I knew how to do, because it was kind of like similar to, what I already do, but more with an immigration focus. And of course, being an immigrant myself and having gone through that whole process, I was like, no way I can do that. So I was like, let me just take some classes, let me learn more about it. And that's what I did. Like last 2 years ago, when I was really pregnant and couldn't do much, I decided I was going to just educate myself during that time and really prepare for what else I wanted to do in private practice. So I did a lot of training on immigration psychological evaluations for court proceedings. And it's been great because I was able to learn about just all the different things that, people, like the applications that people need to be evaluated for, and just meeting people and learning about their lives and how, like, just being reminded of that process and understanding what they're going through, because I myself went through it as a child and I watched my family. So when they're telling me about all the stresses and concerns and worries, it like hits home. I'm like, I understand. I can truly say I understand, and not just say it because I'm a therapist, but I can say, like, I've been there. I've been where you've been. And I remind them that anybody can be like that if they're put in that situation where you just have to, figure out the rest of your life, and you just don't know what could happen, right? Like, you don't know if you're not here and all your paperwork and you're like either a legal resident or citizen, with the politics and everything going on right now, don't know. So it's good to, to have a good immigration attorney and work with them, and and just educate yourself as much as you can to know your rights, because in this beautiful country we all have human rights.
Yeah, I this is actually going to take me to the next part of the talk here with you. So before going to that part where you actually give advice to immigrants, what will be something that you, Aida, of the now, of the present, will say to, let's say, I can't say 20 years back because it probably will be too long, but maybe 10 years back, since you're young and fresh and awesome, what will be an advice that you will give to yourself of 10 years ago?
I think I would, if I could tell myself anything, I think it would be the sky is the limit. Like, you're already here. You're in this beautiful country that has every opportunity available. You just got to look. It's there. If you don't see it, just look and ask and fight. That's what you got to do, because it's here. I've been to countries and I've lived in different countries where there is really nothing, even if you look. There's no opportunity. But here, we really have the opportunity. So I would definitely tell myself just to look and just keep fighting, because there were many times where people told me, you can't do that. You can't study. You can't do a 4-year degree. Your parents never went to school. You don't have that support. You don't know. People doubted me a lot. People thought like I was not mature enough because, I don't know, for whatever reason. I remember one time applying, like I was sitting in a scholarship interview and I was telling them, I want to study, to go to school. I want to help, support my parents when I'm done. And they told me, you're never going to finish college. You can't do, like, you don't have the support. Your family never went like that. Like, your parents never went to school. And I remember thinking, like, that is so sad that this person would try to discourage me. Like, they don't know where I just came from. Like, I see that I have that opportunity, but those times they did take like a little bit of a toll on me, because I'm like, wow, that's so sad. This person is so negative.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here because that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So I think, like, if there's just that one thing I can tell myself is, don't listen to anyone. Just listen to you. Listen to yourself and just look and fight and work as hard as you can, especially the younger you are, because the more you can do, I feel like the more energy you have, and, the more opportunity will come your way.
That's awesome. Really, really
Did I answer it? Did I answer
Absolutely.
everything?
Absolutely. I'm freezing here, but I'll edit this image. Yeah, it's a great advice, I think, and it's true. I mean, being in this country, it's just the sky's limited is very true. And now that we've answered Aida's advice to Aida, you're like constantly in front of immigrants that have been here for a while or have just gotten here, what will be an advice that you can tell them based on your immigrant experience and based on all the studies that you've gotten through the years? Like, what will be a precise advice that you can tell the immigrants that are just in the present trying to move forward like you are?
That's a good question. I like that. I think, like, the biggest advice, it would be from me, I would just tell them, have hope. There are people, it might not feel like it, but there are people who care. They care about you. They care about other people, and you matter, and your family matters. And if the worst case scenario is that you cannot stay in this country and you cannot live here, you will still have each other no matter where you are in the world. And that's the most important thing. Because I feel that, personally, to me, one of the worst things that anyone can do is separate a family. The trauma, the impact of that separation will last a lifetime for children, for families. So by keeping, that is the most important thing. So the biggest tip I have is just have hope. Have really hope, because you're in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And it might not look like that in all the time, but I feel very deeply that that is the case, that this is a very beautiful and good country, and there's more good here than bad. And you have to just choose to look for the good.
Wow. Wow, what a deep advice. I like it. I really like it. It's very
That's from my heart.
All right. And so to wrap up, who will you be thankful for your journey in the United States? And I think I can guess that pretty much, but I want you to say it out loud. Who is that people responsible for your success in the United States of America?
Yeah. Well, it's those two that went through two different countries, left everything behind twice, you know, and started over twice just to give their kids a good future. My parents.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry now.
Yes.
But it's true. It's my parents. They're the best thing ever. I wish everyone had the kind of parents I have because they're such good people.
Shout out to Aida's parents, everybody. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Aida, this has been an amazing talk. It's just the first time around when we started talking that we went a little bit onto it. I'm like, wait a minute, there's so much to know and to learn from you than just, you know, the actual talk that we did last time. That's why I wanted you to come back. Again,
Yeah,
internet is not being at its best, but I'm so glad that we're actually capturing this amazing story. And I will definitely would like to see your parents when they hear you, because I know they're going to be really happy to hear what you just
Thank you. Thank you. Anytime. I'm happy to contribute. You know, immigration is very close to me, very close to my heart. So
yes, and in your family, it runs in your family too. So I'm going to put your link for the services you provide in the descriptions as well. And so if that's okay with you, so that we can, you know, have your services offered here to our community.
Sure. Yep. I work all over the state of Florida. So people can, you know, contact me anywhere in the state.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much, Aida. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Baby girls.
Thank you.
And to Jason as well.
I will. You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye.